Bentonville, Arkansas. When you picture a quiet, all-American town, a place that just feels safe, that's Bentonville. But back in November of 2012, that feeling of security was just completely shattered by a crime so awful it left the entire community just reeling. This is the story of that crime, and the little girl right at the very heart of it. "I love you to the moon and back." These were the very last words 6-year-old Jersey Bridgeman ever said to her mom. It was a sweet, simple little phrase she always used. But now it's forever tied to a night of just unimaginable loss. It's a really personal and frankly heartbreaking place to start this story of trust, betrayal, and a town left in total shock. You see, for little Jersey, 2012 was supposed to be a brand new beginning. It was her chance to finally feel safe after a life that had, sadly, already been filled with so much trauma. So this first part of the story, it's really all about hope and how that hope was just so tragically betrayed. So let's just walk through this for a second. After being so incredibly brave and speaking up about the terrible abuse she'd been suffering from her own father and stepmother, she was finally in what seemed like a safe place. The move next door to a close family friend. I mean, that was meant to be the final piece of the puzzle. A real chance for a normal, happy childhood. And here's the thing that is just so crucial to understand. The man next door wasn't some stranger. Zachary Hawley was a familiar, trusted person in Jersey's life. He and his wife would often watch Jersey and her little sister. She called him Uncle Zach. That really deep, established trust is what makes everything that happened next so profoundly disturbing. But that sense of safety, the one that had been so carefully built up, it was about to be completely and utterly destroyed. The story now shifts to the early morning hours of November 20th, 2012. At 6:43 in the morning, a frantic 911 call comes in. It was Jersey's mom, Desiree. She was reporting that her 6-year-old daughter was missing. All the hope from the night before, it had turned into every single parent's worst nightmare. So you can just imagine the scene, right? Absolute panic. Desiree had tucked her daughters into bed just hours earlier. Now, Jersey was gone. The police showed up right away, but the whole scene was just baffling. There was no forced entry, no broken windows, nothing at all to suggest someone broke in. It was like she had just vanished into thin air. While they were searching the neighborhood, an officer spotted something that just stood out. The back door of a vacant house just 2 doors down the street was open. It was a small detail, but it was enough. They moved toward it cautiously, with absolutely no idea what they were about to find inside. And, well, the search ended in the most heartbreaking way you can imagine. Inside a bedroom of that abandoned house, police found Jersey Bridgeman's body. The Bentonville police chief didn't hesitate for a second. The case was immediately declared a homicide investigation. The question was no longer where is Jersey? It was who did this? With that tragic discovery, the investigation just kicked into high gear. And very, very quickly, suspicion began to fall on someone shockingly close to home. Someone who was supposed to be a protector. So investigators started interviewing everybody, and that, of course, included the neighbor, Zachary Hawley. He gave them an alibi. He said he woke up sick around 3:35 in the morning and walked to a nearby convenience store for medicine. And, surveillance footage actually confirmed his story. But for investigators, this just raised more questions than it answered. Why leave the house in the dead of night? Could this have been a calculated move to create a verifiable alibi? On the surface, Hawley looked like the perfect picture of cooperation. He willingly handed over the clothes he was wearing, he gave them a DNA sample. He seemed to be just another concerned neighbor trying to help the police solve this horrible crime. But behind the scenes, the focus of the entire investigation was narrowing right in on him. So you've got this cooperative suspect whose alibi is both confirmed and kinda weird. What came next was the dramatic turning point, the moment that whole facade of innocence just completely crumbled. This was the almost unthinkable question confronting the police. The man who stood on his porch watching the investigation unfold, the man Jersey called Uncle Zach, could he really be responsible for something this horrific? In an effort to clear his name, Hawley voluntarily agreed to take a polygraph test. The result was, well, it was crystal clear. The test showed he was being deceptive, and that was the first major crack in his story. And then came the forensic evidence. The state crime lab, actually working right through the Thanksgiving holiday, rushed the DNA analysis. The results came back. Biological evidence found on Jersey's body was a match to Zachary Hawley. The science was undeniable. Just listen to this. This is the final moment of his deception. Shortly after being told he failed the polygraph and that his DNA was a match, Hawley actually said these words. But under the sheer weight of all that evidence and some intense questioning, he finally broke. He confessed, revealing critical details about the crime that investigators had purposefully kept from the public, details only the killer could possibly know. So, with a confession and that rock-solid forensic evidence, the case moved to the courtroom. The question really wasn't about guilt at this point, but about what the ultimate punishment should be. The trial itself turned into a pretty unusual legal battle. The prosecution, of course, built this powerful case around the DNA evidence and the medical examiner's just devastating testimony. The defense, though, made a strategic move. They didn't even fight the guilty verdict. Instead, they admitted Hawley's responsibility and focused every bit of their energy on sparing his life, presenting evidence of his own traumatic childhood to try and get some mercy. The jury went to deliberate and came back with their verdict: guilty on all counts. And for the crime of capital murder, they delivered the harshest punishment possible, the death penalty. He also got 2 life sentences for the other charges. And despite numerous appeals over the years, the Arkansas Supreme Court upheld the conviction and the sentence every single time. In the end, justice was served through the legal system, but the story doesn't really end there. It's just so crucial to shift the focus away from the perpetrator and back to the bright, beautiful life that was so tragically cut short. The community was left reeling, of course, but they came together to remember Jersey. At her daycare, all the kids and the staff wore purple. That was her favorite color. It was just a simple, beautiful tribute to a little girl known for her big smile and her happy spirit. And I think this quote from Beverly Angel, who worked at the Children's Advocacy Center, just perfectly captures the girl that everyone remembered. Despite all the hardships she had already been through, Jersey was just a source of light and joy. And that's the memory that endures, not the darkness of her death, but the absolute brightness of her life. The case of Jersey Bridgeman is such a painful reminder of how vulnerable our children are and the devastating consequences when trust is betrayed by the very people meant to protect them. And it leaves us with a really difficult question. When a crime like this happens and it shatters the very foundation of trust in a neighborhood, how does a community and a family even begin to heal?